Good morning, Bake of the Month Clubbers. I'm figuring out this live thing still, so bear with me as I figure it out. All right. It is the Happening George Sew Along today. And what that means is I'm going to today come live a couple of times throughout the day, 4 times to be exact. And I'm going to do a demo. I'm going to show you a little bit of stuff, and then I'm going to shut down, go do it. And then we're going to come back and revisit, answer questions, all those kinds of things. So just a little recap. The George is the Bag of the Month Club pattern for April. April, that's what month we're in. This is the handbag size. You can see it there, size reference. So that's George. This one has rose gold hardware, including rose gold zippers on top. George has front magnetic snap pocket as well as a back one. It has a full zipper closure. With zipper pockets inside. Oh, let's go this way. Slip pocket inside. I can't find it. There it is. Slip pocket inside. And that's the handbag. I'm going to hang that up behind me and I'll grab the carry-all. This is the carry-all size. It's approximately a duffel bag size, so it's definitely a large bag. I'm going to have visitors today because I have Lincoln and Peanut that like to hang out in my sewing room with me. So I'm going to try not to get distracted. This is the carry-all size. Again, rose gold accents and zippers. Magnetic snap pocket. Magnetic snap pocket. There is a crossbody strap that'll go across this. I just haven't put it on. 2 zipper pockets inside and a slip pocket that you can divide up on the inside. Okay. I'm just going to check my live feed here for a second. Make sure everything's working right. I think it is. I'm going with it. So here's what we've got. We have a pattern that you have downloaded from your membership on the Bag of the Month Club website. Okay, this is the George Carry-All. The George Carry-All pattern includes the pattern pieces for both sizes, handbag and carry-all size. It's got diagrams throughout. Oh, there's the pattern piece I was missing. Ha, ha, ha. So it has diagrams throughout, has a cutting list on it. There's a couple of options in your pattern. There's a green box as well as a yellow box, and those are a couple of options for construction, changes, things like that. So the green boxes is if you want to use cork or vinyl as your accent, and the yellow boxes are if you want to add a luggage sleeve to the back of the carry-all. When you do that, you will not be cutting the second pocket pieces here. You'll be adding a luggage sleeve that'll go all the way across here. Okay. Not seeing any comments or anything, so I don't know if everything's going okay, but I'm going to keep going. Makes me nervous. All of that makes me nervous. Just pulling it up on my phone too. But my Face ID does not always work when it's in its stand. Let's pop over here. April saying slide it across. Not sure if you mean the camera. Okay, on my phone, I assume she means slide it across, but I'm on my laptop, so I'm not getting the comments. I'm just going to assume all's well. Right, April? All's well? Give me the nod. I love the bunny ears. We're hopping it along. Okay. All right. So we have our pattern. We have our additions, features. What you're going to do is follow your cutting list. On your very page 2, you have your cutting list for your exterior, accent, lining, interfacing, and foam. And then pop through the preparation steps. That's where I'm going to be starting today, is after my preparation has been done. However, I'm going to show you another piece of paper that I printed up. This is my blog post. I did a blog post that talks about what's going to be expected today, how I'm going to go through this, and a couple of resources. Okay. One of those resources is a Spotify playlist. So at the very bottom of the blog, you can listen to the same music I listen to. I'm not sure if you want to do that. Just saying. There's also a link to a crock pot recipe that I found online that looks really, really, really good. And then you can toss that in the crock pot and let it cook all day, and it'll be done when you're done your bag. And then we have the schedule. On the schedule, I have it broken down to each of the live sessions I'm going to be doing. 9 o'clock this morning, we're going to go through our handle anchors and our strap anchors. And when we talk through that on our bag, these are our handle anchors. These are our strap anchors. And those strap anchors are also on the ends here holding our D-rings. Then we're going to go through handle construction. So handles, a couple of options there. We'll talk through our pocket construction, which is these front and back pockets, as well as how we're constructing our little overlay pieces. Then when I come back at 11, I'm going to do a demonstration on constructing the exterior panels. Then this afternoon, we will start on the lining. We'll do our zipper pockets, we'll do our slip pocket, get all of those. And then 4 p.m., let me flip my page over, put it all together and construct the bag finally, and the crossbody strap, which I cheated a little. Anyways, so that's what we're going to do today. I have yet another piece of paper. I have another blog post out there that talks about tips and tricks for making your Gorge carryall. And these tips and tricks are things that came out of testing, and I've been posting individual ones in the Bag of the Month Club group, just regularly posting them out there, making sure the link to the blog post is in there as well. So there's some preparation tips and tricks. There's handle anchor, exterior main panel, all the different sections of the pattern. I have little tips and tricks in there for them. So I hope you all have your coffee, because I sure do. And we're going to angle the camera down, and I am going to start walking you through how to do your pieces. So let's tilt you down, and you can see my table. Let's try not to see the coffee. You don't really need to see that. All right. So in our pattern, we start with our preparation section where we apply woven fusible interfacing to our pattern pieces. Okay, so that's our SF101 woven interfacing with glue on the one side. We're putting the heavy stabilizer on our base, and then we're putting foam against our exterior pieces. Okay, when I sew based, I highly recommend using a contrast thread. I didn't, of course. Why would I use my own advice? When you sew based, you're doing this 1/8 of an inch from the edge, just a really big stitch. You're holding the layers together. I like to use a walking foot for that. I find that it keeps the layers more consistent overall as opposed to shifting the top layer out of the way. When you are applying diffusible woven interfacing, something to keep in mind is your little handle anchor pieces and your overlays. Do not get the interfacing applied to them. And if you are using cork or vinyl, I typically skip all woven interfacing on those pieces. And that's actually there in our tips. You'll see I've got some writing on mine. The other things that we need to do in our preparation is some markings on our pieces. So here you can see my large body. This is for the carryall size. And markings that we do on this are center markings. So center across the bottom, center across the top. To do those, I'll fold my piece in half. I will not use the pattern piece. My cutting is never the same as the pattern piece. I'll fold those in half. And what you'll see is I've taken a little snip right out of that, all within the seam allowance. Our seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch, but we're just taking that little snip out. That's how I mark all of my centers. And so then we're going to move on to the handle anchors and the strap anchors. Our handle anchor pattern piece is actually used for both sizes of bag. So this is used for the handbag and it's used for the carryall. I think I just moved my tips away. I did. That one's sticking out. The handle anchors can be a little bit finicky because it's such a small piece of fabric. Okay. The instructions have you cut out woven interfacing and fabric for each one. Take your woven interfacing and on the fabric side, not the glue side, put these right sides together and sew all the way around, not leaving a turning gap. Okay, that's the trick, not leaving a turning gap. Now, first, that seems really difficult to do because you've got this nice curve, you've got sharp corners. I have a couple tips. Number one, your handle anchor has this dashed out line, which is the finished size, or that's your sewing line. So if you actually cut it out using the whole piece, and then you cut out your pattern piece on that line and set it down and drew it, you can now sew directly on your line. Okay. Another idea is instead of cutting 4 fabric and 4 interfacing and hope they actually match up, because my cutting skills are really not the best, you can keep it like this, take this to your sewing machine, and now sew directly on that line you drew, and then trim off the excess interfacing. Okay, that's option for you. Then there's another option, which is actually using 2 pieces of fabric. When you sew these together and you turn them right side out, you do see on the edge, you're going to see the 2 pieces of fabric. I'm sorry about the dogs barking. If you have interfacing and you have fabric, I'm going to go let those things out. Bear with me one moment. I felt that might happen today. Only because I don't want it to. They're probably going to still bark in the background for a little bit. My husband's outside. We got 2 inches of snow last night, so there's some shoveling to be done. All right. What I was pointing out is on that edge, you might see your interfacing along the one side and the fabric on the other. So another tip is actually to use 2 pieces of fabric that aren't interfaced. Okay. But again, same technique. Put them right sides together, draw your line on one, and then you can sew them together. One last tip on these. If you sew that top edge, that's our top edge right here, go all the way across, then you fold that down and then sew the remainder curve. And that is going to give you a nice popped out corner on your top edge. Okay? So a whole bunch of tips there for you. Handle anchors can be quite finicky, so they're a bit of a unique butterfly. Once you've sewn all the way around, what you're going to do is you're going to pull them apart. And on the interfacing side, not on the fabric side, I'm going to put a little snip. I have my scissors. I actually do a cross, a plus sign. I pink my edges, and then through that hole, I'm going to turn it right side out. Okay, once you've turned that right side out, you can give it a really, really good press. If you've used the interfacing for that, pressing it will fuse the back to the front. Pull that corner out, that corner out. Run it along my seams. Whenever I turn something, I always want to push out my seams as well as I can. And you have a nice front. You have your turning hole in the back. Okay? And that'll press nicely at the ironing board. Again, if you've used the interfacing, it's going to fuse right up against the front fabric. And then that is a finished handle anchor for the time being. We'll set those aside. You want to do all 4 of them. Use your favorite method, whichever one is best for you. If you're doing cork or vinyl, you want to cut along the dashed line, and you just want to leave it as a raw edge. Turning your cork or vinyl is going to be a difficulty that I do not highly recommend. The next step is our strap anchors. So our strap anchors, pieces of fabric, they do have interfacing on the back. You want to draw your line right down the center, fold your 2 sides into that line, and then top stitch the 2 sides. Once you've done that, you slip your rectangle and D-rings all on these, so you have 6 of these. And you're going to baste across the bottom. Basting stitches, I do, again, 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And I use a big stitch, like a number 5, something really large. So I have some finished ones right here. These are rectangle ones that go on the front of my bag, underneath my handle anchors. It's going to look really pretty. So that's our strap anchors. Set those ones aside. Our handles. We do use a what I refer to as a classic 4-fold method for our handles. Okay, we do want to have finished ends on these. So what I do is I fold it in half. Unfold this one. So take it to the ironing board, fold it in half. Open that up and fold your sides into the center. Classic 4-fold. It's 4 layers folded together. On the ends, I'll then open it up and I'll fold in about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. And as long as I'm folding the exact same amount on all of them, doesn't matter how much I do. Don't fold like 2 inches though. That's just a lot of bulk. Once you've folded that in, you're going to refold these in place. You may need to trim a couple of threads. This gets folded over like so. And then you're going to top stitch all the way around this, all 4 sides, just like I've done on this one. This is the exact same method we're going to use for the strap, the crossbody strap. But there's one other thing you can consider when you make a four-fold strap. If your bag is going to carry a lot of weight, or we overload our bags for women, we carry these purses and we put everything into them. If you're going to carry a lot of weight, add a strip of fusible fleece inside. So open this up, pick one of the sides, and you want a piece that's a little bit smaller than that inside fold section. So this is a 1-inch strap. So I would cut a piece of fusible fleece, this same length, or just a little shorter, keep it out of the ends that are going to get folded over. Cut it about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch, depending on how thick your fabric is. And then fuse it right down inside here. What that's going to do is give you a little padding in that strap, that handle. Another idea for your crossbody strap is once you've added that padding, add some decorative stitching. We all have these stitches on our machines that most of us don't use unless we have a straight stitch machine. This is a stitch I've never used on my machine before, and I thought it might look nice on my crossbody strap. So this crossbody strap has a thread hanging out, but it has been made the exact same way as the handles. All right. We have just a couple more pieces to go. I'm going to skip ahead and talk to you about the overlay pieces instead of talking about the pocket first, because the overlays are very similar to the handle anchors. Your overlays are cut with a piece of fabric and a piece of woven interfacing. Okay. Just like the handles, you want that woven interfacing fabric side against the right side of the fabric, and you want to stitch just the curvy section, not the outside. Here I've done my overlays, again with fabric and fabric, instead of fabric and interfacing. Just an option. Some people are concerned about the amount of fabric they use and would prefer to use interfacing. It's a personal preference. Once you've sewn them together, I use my pinking shears, and I'll put little notches in all my curves with my pinking shears. Yeah, I've got those right here. Somewhere in my vest drawer. Here we go. So I'll take my pinking shears. I won't pink right down at the ends, down here and right here, but I'll pink all the way along the curves. It's just putting the notches in so I don't get bulk when I turn this right side up. Interfacing. Again, at the very end, I left it fully intact, my seam allowance. Same with that end. And then we turn this right side out with our raw edge. I press out my curves first. Use my pressing tool to get that out really well. When I take that to my ironing board, I'll press out just like so. Again, though, I like to use my pressing tool all the way along that seam. And this can be a chopstick. This is just a fancy one I paid for. I did not steal it from the Vietnamese restaurant like I did all my chopsticks, because we know that's where they came from. And you'll press that flat and you'll have 4 overlays. Okay, they should be opposites like this, so that you have 2 for the front and 2 for the back. Okay, if you have 4 that look identical and you've put woven interfacing on the back, you didn't cut 2 at a mirror. Okay, so those are our overlays. And the last piece for demos is our pockets. Put these away. Okay, on these pockets, you have an exterior piece with foam, and you have a lining piece, which is going to receive a magnetic snap. Okay, on these pieces, it doesn't call for it in the pattern, but I do mark my centers on each of these. The reason I do that is when I go to sew these together, I may be trying to line up my raw edges, but my cutting may not be even on both pieces. So at least if I'm going to line up the center markings, I know that when I turn this right side out, my magnetic snap will continue to be in the center. So with the first lining piece, we do want to put a magnetic snap piece in here. I'm going to show you how to do that on my other one, but I wanted to have one ready for it today. When you have your center markings on top and bottom, something that's handy is you can easily, oh, I lost a ruler. There it is. You can easily place your ruler lined up on those center markings, the top at where the 1 is, right along that, coming down, and you use your measurement. So we're measuring down 1¼ inches on the carryall to find the center of where we're going to place our magnetic snap. Use your favorite marking tool. I do tend to use a friction pen when I'm marking my snap placements because my snap is going to go through that. It's going to sit on top. You're never going to see that marking. So if this does leave marks on my fabric, it's no big deal. Now installing that magnetic snap, we also need to do one on the body, the exterior body. Okay. This one has a slightly different measurement, and we're measuring down from this spot, not from the very top edges. So what I'll do is I'll take a bigger ruler, much bigger ruler, and measuring down that from that point, I believe it's 3¼ let me double check my measurement, 3 3/8. So 3, 1, 2, 3/8. I'm gonna check and make sure my ruler is even on this line here, and that's gonna make sure I'm straight coming down the center of the item. The other option is just like I showed on the other piece. Line your ruler up with a center mark on top and bottom, and then measure down 1, 2, 3, and your 3/8. Now this one is a dark fabric. Heaven forbid I use the same marking tool. I have a white one. So 1, 2, 3, and 2, 3/8. Right here is going to be the center of my magnetic snap. All right. So I have the washer right here. The center of the washer is going to go on that plus sign, and I'm going to mark where the prongs go. Now, keep in mind, there are a lot of great tutorials out there. Janelle from Emmeline Bags has a great tutorial on installing magnetic snaps. I'm sure Samantha does. I'm pretty sure Andrew Designs does. You know, there's a lot of great tutorials. So if you have more questions as you go along, you can always refer to those. Now, the tool I use to cut my prong holes is one of these little scalpels from Tula Pink. And what I do is I put it at the top of the slit, and the blade's on this side. It's not on this side. The blade's on this side. And I pull my fabric up to cut through it. Okay? The blade goes all the way through, but only the depth of the prong. I'm just pulling my fabric up. Okay, so I now have a slit right there and a slit right there. Make sure that lid goes back on. Then I fray check. The last thing you want is your fabric fraying out on you. Anytime I have those raw edge bits, I'll toss a little bit of fray check there. Something that some people do is add a little glue. I'm not a huge glue fan because I tend to wear more than I put on my project. The other thing is on your lining piece, add a little bit of extra stabilizer in behind. You do only have fabric and woven interfacing, so add a scrap, couple pieces of interfacing. You could use more SF101, do 2 or 3 layers back there. It's going to be a wear point. The body of your bag will get the magnetic part of the snap, which is the female part. The pocket lining piece will get the non-magnetic part, which is the male. The reason for that is you're going to top stitch that pocket and you're not going to want to stick it to your machine with the magnet. All right. So I'm going to poke those prongs through here. Again, I've got that foam on here, so I'm not worried about adding extra stabilizers to this. And it doesn't matter if it's straight because it's a circle. Grab my... I like to use a flathead screwdriver to help me bend those prongs. Okay. It's about wedging it in between the washer and the prong. I don't bend it all the way. I just get it started, but that puts the bend in the prong at the right spot, in my opinion. Okay. Then I can use the rest of it this way without hurting my fingers too much. Okay. One last tool. Grabbing a piece of scrap to put underneath my magnet. And I'm going to whack it with the mallet. You don't want to plug your ears for a second. One whack. I do not use a metal hammer. Smacking this with a metal hammer could demagnetize it. Just like applying an iron or heat to this could demagnetize it. So I don't ever put fusible woven interfacing on that. What I now do is I take my paper scissors and my duct tape. I happen to have a stepdaughter that went through a duct tape project craze. So I have some of the coolest duct tapes out there. You can tell these are my paper scissors. They really suck. Duct tape right on top. Give it a press down. That will no longer rub against anything in your bag, any lining, any other fabrics, and we're through. So we're protecting the other fabrics by using that duct tape. Now, I think my lining piece also needs a piece of duct tape still. Here you can see I've tossed a couple of pieces of interfacing on there just to give it a little more strength than the fabric and woven interfacing provide. You should have some scraps after doing the cutting out of your project. Alrighty. So now we're going to take these 2 pieces, your 2 pocket pieces, then line up our center marks here. This is one of those tips in the George book. I should call it the George book of tips. Okay, clip them together. Take your corners, clip them together. And then when I take this to the sewing machine to sew this top edge, I am going to sew with it foam side up. My feed dogs don't like to feed foam very well, so I end up with these teeny, teeny, tiny stitches because it's really not moving it well. Plus, your fabric may stretch a little, so anytime you are sewing foam or a foamed piece of fabric to a lining piece that is just fabric and interfacing, I recommend having the lining on the bottom so it can ease and feed that fabric a little easier. So top stitch all the way along that, or not top stitch, I'm sorry. Sew with your construction seam all the way along the top edge. And then you want to, here's one of my things. Anybody who's taken a class with me knows that something I do is I take out the foam in that seam. So you're going to be stitching right up to here, your 3/8 seam allowance. Okay, so your seam's going to come here. You have all this foam up here that adds bulk to that seam. So I'll take out these basting stitches and I'll trim that foam, only the foam, back to that seam. Okay. Then again, pink or notch your curves and turn that right side out and top stitch it. I'm going to show you one that's finished. I've already put the overlays on top of here, but, and of course, black fabric with black stitching, you're not going to see a lot, but you can see I've top stitched that top edge. Okay. The thickness of that edge is the same as the body of it because I've taken the foam out of that top edge. Right, so you're going to top stitch that, and then you're going to lay it on your body. We're almost done. So you're going to magnetic, I'm going to unclip this so I can show you. You're going to lay this on your body with your magnetic snaps attached. You're going to line up the bottom. You'll see how it does not match on the ends. It shouldn't. This is how we keep it out of the bulk when we sew our sides and stuff. So once this is all together, okay, you've got that tight top nice edge. You're going to baste this in place there, along the bottom, and back up. And that's going to hold your pocket in place so that next video, we can come back and put some overlays on. So I am going to finish my pocket. And we will be back at 11 o'clock my time. And at 11 o'clock, I'm going to tilt you back up here so I can see. Ooh, tilting it back. All right. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to finish up my pocket, get that all prepped. We'll come back at 11 o'clock. Just grabbing my schedule here. Figure out which side of my desk. We'll put the pocket on. We'll do the overlays. And we'll put on the strap anchors and the handle anchors. And then we'll start our zipper gusset. Okay, so we're going to get into a zipper. Again, so download pop over to my blog post. There's a Spotify playlist so you can sew along to my music. And it's 9:40 my time. So I'll be back in an hour and 20 minutes for session 2, where we'll step through those props. Thanks for joining me, guys. And I will answer as many questions online as I possibly can between now and then, making sure I get my stuff done. Because I need it for demoing. See you guys soon.